Our next speaker is Mr. Farrukh KARABAYEV, the Deputy Head Antimonopoly Committee of Republic of Uzbekistan. Mr. KARABAYEV has rejoined to newly established Antitrust Committee of the Republic of Uzbekistan as Deputy Chairman with 14 years of progressive work experience in government agencies and global development organizations. He has held various mid and senior management positions at State Competition Authority, National Agency for Project Management under the President of Republic of Uzbekistan, and UNDP. Besides this, he was a member of government working group responsible for implementation of reforms for enhancement of business environment and investment climate, scrutinizing annual doing business surveys results, assessing the business regulations and their enforcement across the country, and developing measures to reduce regulatory burden on business. We are very glad to have you here today, Mr. KARABAYEV, and are eager to listen to your country's enforcement actions during COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tiryaki. Good afternoon, distinguished participants of Icf Annual Webinar. I'm very pleased, and it gives me great honor to speak in this event, in this very important event. So today, as many of speakers have mentioned, that COVID-19 changed our lifestyle and all plans of many governments to reforms and the actions for economic growth. That's why it's very important today to find a universal and very practical solutions to soften the negative effects of the COVID-19. So let me briefly present my presentation on the very brief information on regarding the competition policy framework of Uzbekistan and actions against the negative effects of COVID-19. So let me start. This year there was a new impulse for competition policy in Uzbekistan, and I want to quickly mention that our committee is re-established in early 2019, and now it's quite a young agency, but with great history, and as in various forms, the competition authority exists since 1992, since just after the getting an independence in 1991. And new era and new impulse given by the President of Uzbekistan in 2019, and in 2020, a new impulse for competition policy by the decree of President on July, and where the competitive environment and reduction of state intervention in the economy was the most important parts of this decree. And it's this decree sets a new, very crucial institutional reforms. First, Antimonopoly Committee has become a reporting and accountable directly to Parliament and President to ensure the more independence in decision making and avoid conflict of interest with the ministries under the government. And the second important issue was decrease actions to decrease the extent of state intervention. A so-called yellow page rule was implemented, the mechanisms that sets the prohibition of establishing of SOEs certain conditions to decrease the establishing of SOEs. Third one was introduction of competition compliance mechanism for state-owned enterprises. Also, state aid control was enhanced, and total revision and cancelling of privileges and tax benefits distorting competition was initiated. Another action, very important action, was to eliminate the conflict of interest during the public procurement to make it more transparent and more effective. A prohibition to participate in procurement procedures for affiliated entities of SOEs and mandatory beneficiary disclosure obligation was implemented. Also, our committee is very closely involved in various structural reforms that is ongoing since last 3-4 years. At a new era, as you're aware, started in Uzbekistan, and one of the actions to enhance this reform was the initiation of the mandatory conducting of regulatory impact assessment, competition impact assessment, and regulatory guillotine. A new draft law now is reviewing in the President's office that the main focus was to create a new system of smart antitrust regulation, digital markets regulation, and enhancement of competition law enforcement. And quite comprehensive advocacy policy has started to develop an educational programs on competition, including universities and judge trainings. And most important is the strategy for development of competition for next 5 years was approved, and you can see here the main objectives to simplifying licenses, restrictions of unjustified price increases, reductions of state participation, and so etc. So the key indicators of this strategy is reducing number of monopolies, eliminating distortive legal norms, reducing share of state intervention, growth in the number of market players, and reduction state aid share. And to the main topic, if we turn to the main topic, the competition law and policy during COVID-19 pandemic. So the leadership of the country and the government has initiated the comprehensive anti-crisis measures and a package of anti-crisis measures during pandemic, and by 15 presidential decrees, the total support program worth more than $6 billion, and it covers about 500,000 business entities and 50 million consumers. And mostly these actions are tax vacations and reliefs, credit deferrals, interest subsidies, guarantees for businesses, transport subsidies for exporters, funds for wages of employed workers, etc. And for support for consumers, credit deferrals, guarantees, cancellation of credit fines. Also, support for regions was covered by this very important package of support, the infrastructure projects, suspension of accrual of rental payments for the use of state property. And also our committee, Antimonopoly Committee of Uzbekistan, is very closely involved in this all anti-crisis actions. So it covers more than 100 product markets and it affects more than 15,000 business entities and 2 million consumers. The main actions taken by Antimonopoly Committee was focusing on support for businesses, competition, business rights protection against unfair practices, and government bodies' actions, creating information infrastructures for SMEs, a digital platform, consumer rights protection and advocacy, drafting regional and support of regions. This is drafting regional competition development, consumer welfare programs. So here the main figures and results of actions taken by the committee. Well, since starting the pandemic, Antimonopoly Committee monitors the actions against price gouging for 35 types of significant consumer goods, mainly is FMCG, and also since the February of this year, more than 5,800 anti-competitive and abusive actions, including price gouging, suppressed, and $25 million reimbursed to the business. We have adopted and introduced the competition impact assessment, and since this period we have reviewed about more than 900 draft legal acts, including the local government decisions, and we have cancelled 50% of these legal acts because of the anti-competitive effects and distortive norms. Also, we have proposed an intervention and private storage aid mechanisms for 15 types of socially significant products to prevent price shocks during pandemic. Also, in the sphere of public procurement, more than 3,700 anti-competitive actions, including bid rigging and collusions, was detected during the public procurement, worthing 500 million, and also measures taken to reimburse about $95 million to 2 million consumers during the pandemic. And also we have conducted a competition diagnostics on more than 100 product markets, and we have revealed 33 dominant position companies, and in the sphere of mergers and acquisitions, we have approved about 294 we have granted prior consents on worth about more than $500 million. So here is the response actions examples. First, in February, we have analyzed the existing barriers and problems in production of drugs and medical products against viral infections, and as a result, we have proposed, and by our proposal, the licensing requirements was cancelled. That were excessive, and that was barrier for new entrants of the markets, and daily monitoring of supplying population of personal protective equipment at more than 6,000 retail outlets and pharmacies is to date was conducted. Also, we have monitoring. We are monitoring prices of 52 main and most wanted drugs and medical product prices against excessive practices. Also, we launched a Telegram messenger bot on drugs medical products prices now, which consists about prices of more than 2,000 medical products. And also, since this period, we have issued about 1,400 advocacy information materials and guidelines for consumers. So I want a very quick, these are the response actions. We have drafted a competitive environment diagnosis and roadmaps in 5 regions and in 4 economic sectors, including heavy metal industry, automotive, railways, and aerospace industries, to enhancement of sectoral competitiveness. And here are the main challenges for competition policy enforcement during the COVID-19. First is dilemma of competitive neutrality. So there is a huge issue regarding this because keeping competitive neutrality in distribution of state aid to bail out sectors and enterprises is quite challenging due to enormous damage effect of pandemic. So the provision of state aid, however, needed to be based on kind of objective criteria. So well, should so-called crisis cartels? I mean, in some countries there was exemptions for such a new, I would say, a new forms of conduct the crisis cartels. And this is really a dilemma because in some sectors where the damage very huge, is very crucial to see and to assess and whether they should be exempted or not. And the third challenge is adapting public procurement rules to crisis challenges. And the most important challenge is how to combat effectively with price gouging without risk of distortion of free market principles. This is the main challenges, and so we can see as a committee we see following possible solutions for prevent competition distortions during COVID-19. First, the competition authorities should advise governments while implementing state support strategies to maximum ensuring competitive neutrality. But of course, there should be a transparent rules of that. Limited in time and in manners that reasonable and transparent and foreseeable. And anti-price gouging measures should be focused on making market interventions to increase supply rather than price control and regulations. Joint actions, it's very important, and we find them very effective. Joint actions with industry associations to issue specific guidelines, which are then voluntarily implemented by companies and resulting in coordination of conduct as we call them, crisis cartels. And the last one is competition authorities should coordinate actions with consumer protection agencies if they are separate. For example, in our case, we have the Consumer Protection Agency under our committee. And this is makes things going easier in the issues of consumer protection. And it's very important to use consumer protection powers to protect consumers from unfair pricing practices through vast use of advocacy tools. This was my brief presentation. and I will be happy to answer any question, if any. So thank you very much for your attention.